So I want to talk about something that's quickly becoming a pet peeve for me. So this is a fairly standard process model. We are using swim lanes to indicate who's doing what. So we have a candidate who's applying for a job. It goes to HR. HR reviews the application. They decide if it's acceptable or not. If it is acceptable, we send it over to the technical manager who interviews the candidate. And if not, then it goes back to the candidate. Nothing really tricky about this. It's not really very complex. But there's one thing about it that I find kind of divides experienced process modelers, and that is the use of swim lanes or not using swim lanes. Now, people like myself who like swim lanes will actually tell you, well, swim lanes add a lot of really useful information. You know who's doing what, you know what the flow of data is, you know the departments that are involved, and it's really very useful. People who don't like swim lanes will tell you that it is busy. I mean, if you actually take a look at this diagram, you'll notice that, for example, you've got, no more than 4 or 5 widgets on here, including the start and the gateways, but you've got all these other lines, the swim lane and the pool, and then all this text over here. It is objectively a busier thing. If you were to show this to a child, they would look at this as something that is busy. I'm not suggesting that our clients are children, but what I am saying is that an objective, unbiased perspective will definitely say that this has more information on it than it would have if you were using, something closer to this. So, the question becomes, what is too busy? What actually makes sense and what doesn't make sense? So, in my opinion, the way that this should really work is that there should be candidate groups that kind of float over the roles, the human tasks, so that you can see who's doing what, but you don't necessarily have to have the busyness of the swim lanes. So you can have this diagram or this diagram. Now, to those of us who are experienced in process modeling, there's not a lot of difference, right? A couple extra lines, what's the big deal? But you have to remember that we don't create these diagrams for peers like ourselves. We create these diagrams to talk to the business user who's busy, has a million things on her mind, and is really trying to get a condensed sense of information and what's happening and make sure that we understand what she's really trying to do in her day-to-day business. So the less noise, the less busyness there is, the less distraction there is, the more likely we are to be able to communicate with her. And for those of us who are experienced in swim lanes, I think that it is easy to miss that, we can leave those people behind because we're doing something that has been practiced for 20 years, but it just sounds like noise. It sounds like Miles Davis's jazz. When he got really experimental and kind of carried away out there, he was creating music for really other professional high-grade jazz musicians. It didn't make sense to the average person. And I have started to wonder if the use of swim lanes is something like that as well. Like it's something that I would do that, other people that are experienced with this would go, yeah, of course, that looks right. But if I'm just trying to show it to, an everyday person who's adopting BPM and they have a bunch of other stuff going on in their lives, and they just want to make sure that I understand how their workflow works, maybe something like this is easier. So in order to sort of bring the choice up, what we did at Capital was that we created a free open source standard plugin that allows you to go in and sort of do exactly what you're seeing here. So basically within the context of this plugin, what you can do is you can come in and if you have a candidate group and you want to show the activity and the candidate group that's doing it, you can just type in the candidate group here in the Camunda process modeler, and you check this little plugin, and then we show who's doing what. And if you don't want it, you obviously don't have to use it. But the idea here is that I can come and convey some meta information very quickly about who's doing what, and I can take it away really easily so that we can focus more on the workflow when we need that. So remove noise when we don't need it, turn it into signal when we do need it. So again, the way the plugin works, I'll put a link to it in the documentation for this presentation, but the way it works is basically you just come in, you indicate the candidate group here, you turn it on, and it will show you the candidate groups that are involved for human tasks. It's got a little bit of nuance to it. So, for example, if the candidate name is long, you have to hover over it in order to be able to extend it. We're happy to solicit feedback on that. We thought about, how to support multiple candidate groups and what we do with candidate users and that sort of thing. We thought about adding colors so that you can create functionality there. We actually have another plugin that I'll talk about later that allows you to have legends and even data flows. But the premise of this is for me to sort of talk about this pet peeve that I'm having around potentially leaving my customers behind a little bit by making them look at things that are potentially a little bit busy and off-putting versus something that's a little bit more like this. Okay, I hope this is helpful. Go check out the link. Let us know what you think of the plugin. We'd love to hear some feedback on how we can make it even better. Thank you.